Hello friends, today we are going to see what is a default method and what is the use of it. And that said, default method is something that has been introduced as part of 1.8, and the real purpose of the default method is to build a backward compatibility feature with our existing interface and then the implementation class. And let's see with an example. So assume that we have an interface with the three abstract method, and then also assume that we have 100 different implementation classes for that interface, and obviously all 100 classes will have that implementation for those three default methods. And assume also sometime in future that you wanted to add a fourth method to the interface. Before 1.8 we were forced to give implementation of that method in all 100 classes, even though the functionality remains the same across the classes. But this is something that created a lot of trouble for the development, and also which incurred a lot of effort testing all 100 classes, even though there is no change in functionality across the classes. With Java 1.8, this has been overcome with the concept called default method. The same situation, like when you wanted to add the fourth method to an interface, and you also know the functionality is going to be the same for all 100 implemented classes. So in that case, what we can do is we can declare that method at the interface level itself, and we have to use a special keyword called a default. So when we do that, basically we are adding a fourth method to the interface with some common functionality, and that will be available for all 100 classes without even touching those implementation classes. And by doing this, we are really accomplishing the backward compatibility. Basically you just added a fourth implementation, and you didn't have to touch any of the implementation classes, whereas with 1.7 or now the versions before that, you could not accomplish this. And let's see with an example so that we can understand more clearly. So this is my Eclipse. I've already created a project to demonstrate this, and now what I'm going to do is I'm going to create an interface. Let's name this interface as a car. So and uh, and what I want to do is my car interface is going to have two abstract methods. Let's call it as quick string get engine type. So this is my first abstract method. Let's say string get horse power. So this is my a conventional interface which has two abstract methods, and let me give implementation to this interface with two different implementation class, and let's call it as Honda. So basically I'm creating two different cars, Honda and Toyota. So now I have two different classes, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to have them implement the interface called car. So as soon as you implement the car interface, it's going to prompt you to have implementation for those two abstract methods. So now I have taken care of implementation. Okay, so now I have taken care of overriding those two methods in the implementation classes. So now what I'm going to do is Toyota, let me put in a value as i4, and then I want to horsepower. I just wanted that to be let's say 180 pp. So this is what implementation for my Toyota class that implements car interface. And for Honda, what I'm going to do is I'm going to give a different implementation. So let's say that I want to call it as a V6 engine, so instead of i4, and on the horsepower I wanted that to be higher than that, so let's call it as 230 pp. Okay, so now my implementation classes are complete. Basically these two implementation classes have implemented car interface, and they have also given implementation for the abstract methods that are in the car interface. And now if I create a main class, let's call it as a main class. So now I have created a main class. Void main string box. So what I have done is I have created instance for both Honda and Toyota, and have that reference held using the super class, which is the interface car here, and I am also going to call the method engine type from both the instance, and let's see what it gives us. So now when I run this class, okay, so it has given us the expected output, which is V6 and i4, because the implementation for the Honda engine type is going to be hold on, to be the V6 for Honda, and the get engine type for Toyota we have given implementation i4. So that's why when we invoke these methods from the main method, basically it has given us the corresponding values. So assume this is the very simple implementation with an interface that has two abstract method and then two implementation class. And let's assume that we have 100 different implementation class for this car interface, like a Honda, Toyota, Subaru, and you keep adding BMW, Benz. So assume that we have so many implementations for this car interface, and also assume that we already have this code deployed and running in production. And now customer is asking us to add another functionality to the car, which is common across the implementation class. So what we would do is we would just come and add functionality, something like, let's say that now we want to add a functionality called turning on the alarm. So which is available across the car types, and with the same implementation, which is going to just start the alarm. So let's say that now I'm going to add this public void turn on alarm. So if you look at it, we have added this abstract method to this interface, and if you look at it, all the implementation classes have got this error mark saying that these implementation classes do not have implementation for this newly added abstract method. So what we have to do is we have to go and give implementation to the newly added method. So when I do that, so basically I'm adding giving an implementation. So if you go here, so with Toyota also we have to give implementation for the newly added method, and like I have already said, we are giving the same implementation, and assume that we have 100 different implementation classes. In all 100 different implementation classes, we are forced to go and add this newly added method with the same functionality, and this was really not the best way of accomplishing, but we didn't have anything like a default method before 1.8. So when this situation, or when the scenario was the case, then we were forced to do that before 1.8. But with 1.8, what they have done is they have introduced something called an default interface, and that's what we are going to see now. So let's assume that we have the same situation with 1.8. So instead of adding this as an abstract method, what we can do is we can basically give the implementation in the interface itself, something like this, and we can just call this method as a default method. So when we do that, so basically what we are saying is I am adding a new functionality to car interface, and I just want to give the implementation for that method. So that will be the default implementation across my implementation classes. So now Honda doesn't have to give implementation to the method, because we have already given a definition for that method at the interface level, and we have also called that method as a default. So that's it. So if you look at it, now we have just added this third method to the interface, and we didn't even touch the implementation classes. The implementation classes remain the same, and we just given a new functionality. So now if you go to the main class, and if you, let's say that I want to invoke the newly added functionality, if I simply call that method using any of the instance, turn on alarm. So look at here. So I'm just calling turn on method on the Toyota instance variable. But if you look at the Toyota class, it does not have implementation, but the implementation is sitting in the interface itself, and that is marked as a default method. So if I run this now, let's see. There you go. So we have got the expected result. So what we have really done is, like, we have added a new method, and also we didn't even go and touch the implementation classes. So this way we have really accomplished the backward compatibility. So basically you just added something new in the interface, and you all your implementation classes are working fine. So this is a cool feature that has been added as part of 1.8. And the other example that I could say is, if you have come across a method called for each, which has been newly added to your collection package. This is how they have done it. They did not go and add that. Uh, they did not have that implementation across the child classes, like an array list or not linked array list and all those things. There are so many implementers for the list interface, but they did not touch any of those implementation classes. They just added the for each method at the interface level, and they declared that method as a default, and has a common functionality. And this is a cool thing that has been introduced. And you can ask me one question: how is it different from abstract class? So in Java there is something called abstract class. We already know that it allows us to have abstract method plus a concrete method. And if you look at this car interface, which is similar, right? I mean, this interface now has abstract method, and also has the concrete method that has an implementation. But there is a subtle difference between abstract class and the interface with the default method. So I would say, let's say that in abstract class you can have a private methods to help any of the methods that are already there in the abstract class. But in case of interface, you are not allowed to have private methods. Even when you use default keyword, it does not allow you to have a private default method in interface. And that is something that now you get to do with abstract class, but not with interface with default method. And the other thing that I wanted to point out is a constructor. So in abstract class we are allowed to have constructors, and but with interface we cannot have constructor, and that's another other difference. So I would say interface with the default method is not an replacement for existing abstract class. So abstract has its own thing, and it has own features. So it boils down to your requirement, how you want to accomplish this, and what is something that you wanted to do as part of it. And I hope that now you have got what is a default interface, and sorry, default method, and how to use it. And thanks for watching this video. And now, if you really like this video, please subscribe to my YouTube channel and like my Facebook page. And thank you very much for watching this video. Bye bye.